Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to today's live stream. We're talking about the Titans actually existing. Now, we live in a time that a lot of people are calling the awakening, okay? A lot of people are waking up to all types of alternative realities and truth. Now, the Titans being really having existed in history, that's one of those truths that people are starting to wake up to. You see, we started off at our present and we started sort of reconstructing our history the further back in time we go. Now, I made this video because I was actually looking into traveling to Maya Bay where this Titan video was taken. And this was, I don't know, a little less than a year ago. The video came out, someone had shared it with me, and so I put the video online, and it's close to 1 million views right now. Right when that video took off in views, as you saw, it was nothing, and then out of nowhere it took off. About a month later, Maya Bay was closed off by the government of Thailand. And what they said is, well, we need a few months. Typically, we'll close down things, for a few months so that we can get rid of all the pollution and things of that nature. However, I continued to upload Titan videos where Titans, the remains of them, have been found. For those of you who are new to my channel, basically the theory is that the ancient world was petrified at one point in time, giving rise to what we call the Age of Rock, or better known as the Stone Age. So right around that time, the beach, Maya Bay, it was supposed to only have been closed for about 3 months. 3 months later, after I uploaded another video about another mountain titan that was located in Hawaii, in the exact same valley where they filmed Jurassic Park. And Jurassic Park, as we all know, is not about giant lizards roaming around, but it's the kingdom of the lizard beings, or the kingdom of the ancient shining gods, the ancient titans, the large beasts and monsters and beings of our world. Anyhow, the Thai government decided to go ahead and shut down Maya Bay indefinitely, completely. It's closed off to the public. You're not allowed to go there. No one's allowed to go there. Now, I'll tell you right now what they'll say. What they say is, this is all due to Leonardo DiCaprio. This is all Leonardo DiCaprio's fault because he was in a movie that was semi-popular in about the year 2000 called The Beach. And the movie The Beach was filmed at Maya Bay. So what they're saying is that movie back in 2000, what is that, like 19 years ago, basically, that movie has just brought in so many tourists all of a sudden that this year, at that particular time, they needed to shut down the entire bay. Now, I'm going to tell you what my theory is. I believe that as this awakening occurs, the veil that is cast over our eyes is starting to lift. We're starting to see things that were right in front of us the entire time. We were blinded to these things. And, one of those things that we're starting to see are these remnants from an ancient culture, from an entirely ancient and magical world that pre-existed our written history, the written history where our school system picks up. Our school system will start our modern history basically in the time of Babylon and Sumeria, and they'll talk about the clay tablets and cuneiform writing and some of the earliest writing from the ancient civilizations. However, when they talk about these ancient civilizations, they typically paint them as being less and less civilized, less and less advanced the further back we go. But according to my studies and many other people, we've seen the exact opposite as that. The further back in time we go, the larger people were, the larger beings were, the healthier people were, the smarter people were. We go back in time and we will eventually get back to the time of paradise when everything was perfect. Various religions refer to it and give it different labels. They refer to it as different names. It could be Shambhala, the Garden of Eden, Utopia, the Elysian Fields, things of that nature. So the further back in time we go, the better things were, okay? Now, as a part of this is reconstructing our history. Many people in this awakening are starting to realize we have not been told the truth. this entire time. As a matter of fact, we're stumbling upon all types of evidence that seems to be contrary to the story that you have provided to us. So people are independently researching, independently studying, independently looking into the world with fresh and new eyes that are unbiased. Excuse me. Unbiased, as far as the opinion that we have been told that we should have, as far as our worldview that's been handed to us, as far as our philosophy and our history and our perspectives. The world is telling us what to think. The world is telling us what to believe, when many of us already admit our history has been fabricated, our past has been rewritten, and much of it has been burned in the great libraries of the world. It's been stolen. Information, knowledge, factual historical stories that have happened, including the stories about the so-called gods, the time of magic, paradise, and of course, we have the Titans as well. Now, for many of you who are new to this subject, I highly recommend doing a search on mud fossil theory. I also have a lot of videos here on my channel and an entire playlist devoted to what is known as mud fossil theory. You'll get a better understanding of how the Titans and giants could physically exist, how the old world had better technology than we do today, but that technology and that ancient life petrified in the war that existed between the giants, also known as the gods, and the Titans themselves, which were their parents. Now, typically when people think about Titans or giants, we revert to something we may have gleaned, something we may have heard in our schooling, and we think about basically Greek mythology. That's the first thing that comes into many people's minds. Well, except for the millennials, like the first thing that comes to their mind is Attack on Titan. And that's okay, because you know what? I'm going to do a video about Attack on Titan being a real story about something that has actually happened here in our realm where we live. But the first thing we think about are the Greek myths, the Greek legends. And I find it to be really interesting because sometimes when I'm having a debate or I'm talking with somebody who has an alternative view, they'll back up their modern academic thought process with, well, the ancient Greeks discovered this, the ancient Greeks, this and that. Well, okay. Well, if we're putting so much stock into the ancient Greeks and what they believed in and their knowledge that they had, shouldn't we also re-examine these stories that they had that we call myths? Shouldn't we look at their history, which is what that is? You see, Greek mythology was not mythology to the Greeks, to the ancient Greeks who lived and breathed at the time. That wasn't myth. That wasn't lies. That was history. That was their history. And they were proud of it, and they preserved it, and they were proud that they had held on to the true nature of our world, to the true history of our world, to our origins and our beginnings. They passed those stories down throughout time. It didn't have to become a religion. It didn't have to become something where you were told and instructed what to do. All the Greeks did was say, here's the story. Here is the story of what had happened. And you know what? It's not just the Greeks. Many cultures all across our realm have similar, if not exact, stories about the Titans and how they once lived and pre-existed the gods, how they were the terraformers of our world, how their purpose was to create the world for those who would come after them. And they walked, and wherever they walked, they left puddles, they left footprints, they left lakes, they left canyons and valleys and mountains. I believe that they actually carved out the land where our oceans are today, and then that space was filled up with water. But the Titans are a crucial element in reconstructing and going back in time to figure out what our true history is, where we really come from, and what actually had happened. Because one thing's for sure, we all have this itching in the back of our minds. We know there's more to the story, and that's why we're truth seekers. We might not agree on everything, but we listen and we research and we look into these things for ourselves. Now, like I said, these are not myths as in lies. Myths are truth that are told in story form. That's all it is. It's the truth. Now, somebody might tell a story of the truth. They might change the names. They might change how the characters look. But the underlying story, the underlying history of what's going on has truth to it. And that's why I believe that we need to re-examine our oral traditions and take a second look at them using things like comparative mythology to take all the stuff that adds up, all the similarities that exist and permeate all these stories, and we need to reconstruct our own history so that we have a better sense of who we are today, where we've come from, and it gives our present time more purpose. If I look down, I'm checking my notes here. So, let me address something. Many people who have come across mud fossil theory, many people who have seen some videos that are out there on YouTube, they'll see that people are seeing titans and giants in the mountains or wherever it may be, right? Petrified remains of an ancient past. And many of the naysayers will immediately Google it real quick, right? And if you Google things like this and you look it up on Wikipedia or something, it'll talk about pareidolia. Pareidolia is whenever you see an image in something that's just kind of bland. I'll give you an example. A Rorschach test is a perfect example of pareidolia. In a Rorschach test, they'll spill some inks. Some people call it the ink blot test. And then they open it up to see what you see in the spilled ink, right? Or some people will look up at the clouds and they'll see images and they'll say, hey, that cloud looks like this, that cloud looks like that. But those clouds are constantly changing. That ink that was squished into that paper, we know that nobody drew that. We know that nobody had intentions whenever they drew that out. Pareidolia does not apply when you're looking at a statue of something. When you're looking at an exact physical, hardened and densified, petrified replica of something. Now, you could see all kinds of stuff in the mountains or in the ground or wherever. However, when the evidence builds up, when it builds up and it builds up and you take that evidence, wow, that one really looks like a titan. Wow, that one looks like a person. That looks like a giant animal, but these are all hills and mountains and boulders and rocks. How could that be? It's not pareidolia, okay? The reason we know this is because we have actual written history. We have scriptures. We have religious documents. We have sacred writings that all talk about the time when the giants and the titans walked our realm. As a matter of fact, it was such a crucial time in our history that people made note of it all the time, and it survived into our oral history in the form of fairy tales and myths and legends and children's stories. These things were passed on because they were a crucial focal point in our history. We remember these things subconsciously. We keep them in our collective memories. That's why they pop up from time to time. As a matter of fact, if you open your eyes and you look around and you consider that the titans may have actually existed, I believe that you're going to start seeing evidence for that everywhere you look, especially in places like the world around you. Okay, there are many petrified remains of the ancient world all over the place, but we chalk it up to, that's just a rock, that's just a boulder, that's just, well, what is a rock? What is the earth? What is ground? What is dirt? What are these things? These are just labels we've put on something to take it for granted, to dismiss it so that we don't look further into these things. The fact is, there is a lot of evidence that suggests that there was a prehistoric world, an ancient world that we have not been taught about, that's been kept from us, and that world petrified and turned into stone because of extremely advanced weaponry and technology that was used. I believe they were petrification weapons. The Great Deluge, the flood that flooded the entire world, popularly known as Noah's flood, may have had a huge impact on the petrification of the world. However, when we look around, we see the sleeping giants all over the place. There are legends and myths that abound from every culture around the world, and they talk about how their ancestors knew that their worlds, their islands, their communities, the oceans, the mountains, all of these things were formed and were directly connected to the titans that once existed. I'll give you an example here in a minute. Actually, I'll give you an example right now. So I have mentioned this a few times. Many people are familiar with the Bible. The Bible is the most popular book in Christianity, right? Well, not many people know that the origin stories, the stories of the beginnings of all things, right? Most people would think about the book of Genesis, but the book of Genesis had other contemporaries, other stories, other books that went right along with it, but they had a different focus on things, right? For example, the book of Genesis focuses on the firstborn children, and it really goes along a certain bloodline, and it focuses on the firstborn and the males of that bloodline, right? There's another contemporary of the beginnings of all things called the book of Joshua. There are a few of these, actually. And the book of Joshua is quoted in the Bible itself. Actually, I believe it's 1 Samuel, I want to say. Could be 2 Samuel, but I think it's 1 Samuel in the Old Testament. Half of the entire first chapter is directly taken and plagiarized. I don't know if it's plagiarized, but it was directly copied from the book of Joshua, right? Now, I'm going to read to you from the book of Joshua itself. And this is the account of the Israelites and King Og. King Og was also mentioned in the Old Testament in the Bible, but this is a very interesting description of King Og. If you'd like to look it up for yourself, I'm going to be reading from the book of Joshua, chapter 85, verse 23. So let me get that pulled up here. All right, the book of Joshua, chapter 85, we're going to start on verse 22, and it says, "And Og, king of Bashan, was a very powerful man, but Naaron, his son, was exceedingly powerful, even stronger than he was. And Og said in his heart, Behold, now the whole camp of Israel takes up a space of 3 parsa. Now I will smite them at once without sword or spear. And Og went up to Mount Jahaz, and took therefrom one large stone, the length of which was 3 parsa, and he placed it on his head, and he resolved to throw it upon the camp of Israel, to smite all of the Israelites with that stone. And the angel of the Lord came and pierced the stone upon the head of King Og, and the stone fell upon the neck of Og, that Og fell to the earth on the account of the weight of the stone that was upon his neck. At that time the Lord said to the children of Israel, Be not afraid of him, for I have given him and all his people and all his land into your hand, and you shall do with him as you did to Sihon. And Moses went up to him. Moses went up to King Og, right, after he had fallen. Let me start over. Verse 27, And Moses went down to him with a number of the children of Israel, and Moses smote Og with a stick at the ankles of his feet, and slew him. The children of Israel afterward pursued the children of Og and all of his people, and they beat and destroyed them until there was no remnant left of them. Now, it talks about measurements, okay? It talks about how King Og, who was the king of the giants, basically, or the king of the titans who had survived, Nephilim, titans, giants, Raphaim, whatever you would like to call them, they're very, very large beings, okay? King Og goes up onto this mountain, and he says, let's see here, Israel is about 3 parsas down there. Now, 3 parsas is one parsa is 4 kilometers, okay? The camp of the children of Israel, as seen from Og's perspective on the top of the mountain, was about 12 kilometers wide. He took up a stone that he says was 12 kilometers, basically the exact same size as the camp of Israel, and was going to throw it and basically squish all of the little Smurf Israelites down there and kill them, right? King Og is like the Gargamel of the Bible, basically, okay? And Gargamel is directly related to the word Gorgon, or the giants, or the titans, right? The ancient gods. Pardon me. So that's the account of King Og. There are so many. I'm not going to spend the entire video reading because I want to encourage all of you to start looking into some of the islander myths, some of the native legends, some of the older tribal creation stories. And I'll bet you that if you do look into that, you're going to come across factual historical legends from these people, oral traditions that have been handed down, and say the Titans did exist. As a matter of fact, you can see the evidence all around you in the world that you live in today. It's all over the place. Why do you think that so many places have what they call sacred rocks? They have sacred rocks, they have menhir, they have standing stones, all in really strange locations, giant boulders in random fields that no one knows how they got there, but for some reason all the uneducated cavemen of our past decided they really needed to get the pulleys and ropes together to get these giant standing stones that are megalithic and tons of weight to just stand all by themselves out in the middle of nowhere, Titans existed. Giants existed. You had the Titans, who were the original gods or creators of our world. Actually, I wouldn't say the creators. I would say the shapers, okay? Because I believe that there was something even before the Titans themselves, right? The Titans come, and their entire duty, their responsibility, is to shape the world that we live in. They are preparing it, beknownst or unbeknownst to them, for those who would come next. Now it happens that those who came next were the gods, also known as the giants. The giants themselves, they were really tall, like in feet, okay? The Titans were much larger. And then, of course, the giants or the gods would prepare the world even further on a smaller scale for those who would come after them. And that would be us, mankind. Now, you're going to see a lot of pictures and some videos over here throughout this video. Mostly it's just examples, but what I'm trying to get everyone to understand is that these things are confidential. This is a secret. This is not supposed to be rediscovered. Well, it's going to be. It's inevitable, right? It's inevitable that we would rediscover this. But they want to hold on to their power for as long as possible. Now, many people would say, well, why would they cover this up? That's always the first question. And that's a good question. I like that. Good. But don't just ask the question. Think about possible answers to that question, right? I'll tell you some possible answers from my perspective. Why would they cover up an entire world that's filled with the Titans, the remains of the ancient past? They don't want you to know about the gods. They don't want you to know about the Titans. Why? Because they own this world right now. They are the power. They are the authority. And according to their story, they always have been. That's not true, is it? No, absolutely not true. There were beings that existed before them that set up everything in our world for them for whenever those beings would leave. And before them, there were Titans. There were giant beings. And some people would say to me, well, I don't know, how could they stand under all that weight? The laws of physics should prevent that. Well, guess what? The bumblebee doesn't know about the laws of physics. The laws of physics say, from what I hear, that the bumblebee shouldn't be able to fly. But guess what? The bumblebee flies anyhow. I don't know about everything technical in our world. I'm not the smartest person in the world. However, I am waking up, and I am able to start to see some really weird anomalies in the world around me, especially those anomalies that are geographic in their nature. Really strange rock formations, really weird boulders and canyons and caves and all this stuff. And the only thing that we're told is, well, that's because of rain. That's wind and rain. Well, how could wind and rain make that? Well, you got to imagine millions and millions of years piled onto it, and then let your creative side do all the work. And you can imagine the wind and rain kind of forming the exact same shape as a body or a person or a titan or what have you. Now, in the video I showed at the beginning, you can see an excellent comparison. Welcome, Frank, by the way. You can see an excellent comparison of the victims that died in Mount Vesuvius's explosion, right? The Pompeii victims. Now, I'm not saying that those titans were, in fact, Pompeii victims. However, petrification is absolutely possible, and it's a reality. Petrification of organic life is an accepted reality in our world. How can you say that? Haven't you ever heard of the petrified forest? Petrified trees? Well, wait a minute. If a tree can petrify, a tree was once a living, breathing, organic, breeding. It gave life, Trees reproduced. And we have millions of them that are rock. that have turned into stone. We have myths and legends about the gargoyles, about the Gorgon, about Medusa, about all of these different gods. And I did a video about this about 2 weeks ago. And it was about petrification in our myths and our legends. And I was talking about the petrification weapon that I believe once existed in this ancient world where the gods battled against the Titans. Now, if you don't know more about the gods and the Titans and the war that they had with one another, it was basically a 10-year war, okay? So the story goes that the Titans were here first, the gods made their appearance, then the gods started making their home. Our world was a forest, basically. It was a huge sylvan world filled with gigantic plants, huge trees all over the place. It was a sylvan world, and those gods made their home in the forest. They made their home in the sylvan world, in the paradise world, Atlantis, whatever you would like to call it, okay? The gods lived in and among those giant trees and our world at the time. Then they started having conflict because, of course, you have these huge titans that are still terraforming. They're cutting everything down. They're basically threatening the homes of the gods who lived there. So, of course, one thing leads to another, and then you have a war between the ancient fathers, known as the Titans, and their children, known as the gods, right? And that's when you can get into the study of Kronos and Zeus and all of his following and all of that. But my point is, this is not a cartoon. This is real. Yes, they draw it up like a cartoon because we don't have photographs from back then. We don't have videos from back then, but we do have photographs from today. Just like this one right here, you can see someone just laying down right there, right? Now, I did throw in some other stuff here just so you can get an idea of, what kind of stuff we're talking about. Clearly, that's not actually, that's a Photoshopped picture. But it serves as a visual for all of the things that we see in our daily lives. And like I said, the Titan, the movie The Titan, look at this guy's skin. Do you see how it's sort of scaly, sort of shiny? The shining ones were what the ancient gods were known as. And they would leave this shine, or they would leave this glimmer on their offspring, even their offspring that were only part directly related to them, part giant, part god, part titan, whatever it may be. And they left that signature in the DNA. Now, some people who are related DNA-wise pick up what's known as the shine, right? Certain DNA that's called junk DNA today is activated when it's not supposed to be, right? A lot of us are having our DNA activated. A lot of our energy is just vibrating at such levels that we're all starting to see things differently. Everyone's asking questions. Everybody's wondering. Everyone's speculating. Those are good things. You know why? Because we live in an age where there is a severe imbalance in the energy in our world. It's a male-dominated energy. I'm not talking about sex. I'm not talking about males versus females. I'm talking about the energy. Male energy is direct. It's outward. Female energy is the exact opposite. It's inviting. It comes in. It brings things into it. Right now, we are lacking the female energy in the world today, but that's starting to resurface now, isn't it? We see that all over the place. Let's not take sides and say, oh, it's evil, immediately. Like, that's what we're programmed to do. Like, right? Oh, it's evil. Oh, it's different. It's evil, or whatever. Like, I don't know. It's evil. Let's not say things are good or say that they're evil. Let's just say that they are. Let's acknowledge that Maya Bay, as we have seen, doesn't just have what looks like the body of one perfectly petrified titan just laying there, but two different ones. And that's only from a cursory glance, looking at things from Google Earth. Like I said, I was planning on actually going there. I want to take my drone. I want to get really close, as close as I can, and I would love to get some samples. There is an excellent YouTube channel called Mud Fossil University, ran by a man named Roger Spur. Roger Spur has taken some samples of what he believes to be the petrified remains of an ancient world, and he had them DNA tested. Guess what? Those tests results were positive, that they did come back. And it wasn't because DNA was added over time or anything. There's DNA in the rock itself, which makes sense because guess what? All of our religions, especially the esoteric parts that are kept from us, and our myths and our stories and our legends, they all talk about beings becoming petrified as if it were a fact, as if it really did happen. Typically, petrification comes as some sort of a punishment, right? Of course. But the stories don't indicate that the petrification that has happened was accidental whatsoever. Every story I've ever come across, whether it be in the myths or the legends, they talk about the petrification of other beings as being a punishment, which means that there is weaponry, there's technology that can petrify people, and that was being used. Now, I believe that technology was blacklisted. I believe that was a form of technology that was not supposed to be used, that it was outlawed, which is why we only see the petrification myths and stories and legends kind of peeking out from time to time, because I believe that those beings, typically bad, typically they're the bad guys, typically they're evil, right? I believe that they did have a form of magic or super advanced technology that we don't understand today. Now, would we say, oh, that's impossible, you can't petrify a person? Yes, you can. I've done many videos about this. Dorolomo Sagato was a man who found out how to petrify the human body. He's the only one, supposedly, and he died off mysteriously soon after being visited, and he was told that he was going to share his information with one of his understudies. He never got to share that information. He just died all of a sudden. Isn't that a little strange? Isn't that the way it typically goes when you have somebody who has found out about an ancient form of technology, somebody who's ready to share it with the rest of the world, and all of a sudden, poof, they're gone. They don't have the opportunity to share it anymore, right? Well, guess what? You can't stop everybody. Those people, they started throughout time, and you'd have, your Dorolomo Sagatos, or you would have your Nikola Teslas, or you would have Edward Leedskalnins of the world, just unsung heroes who were geniuses, who figured out that you can re-examine the past to rediscover how technology is supposed to work, how our world, how our natural way, our natural order is supposed to work. And you can work with nature in order to manipulate the energy in the world. Basically, it is called magic. Magic is technology that is not comprehended. It's not understood. So we just label it, oh, that's magic, That's a magic trick or whatnot. I am not talking about magic tricks. I'm talking about reality. And I'm dead serious. Why would I, or anyone else, I'm not the only one. There are hundreds of people on YouTube that are putting up mud fossil videos all of the time, right? Why would I dedicate so much of all of this that you see, my time, my energy, my effort, if it was just made up? If I was just like, oh, hey, isn't this fun? Isn't this entertaining? Yes, absolutely. It's very entertaining. But it's not amusing. It's not amusing at all. It is important. It has import. It has weight. Why does it have weight? Because we need to know about this. Haven't you ever wondered why so many books of venerated, like so many religious books that are venerated, like the Bible. Haven't you ever wondered, why did these books not make it into the Bible? Typically, from my experience, it's because those books give out some information that the people are not supposed to have, or other people don't want us to have. If those ancient books and manuscripts start talking about giants physically actually existing, or they give their dimensions, or they talk about how large these beings were, those things will be covered up. But like I said, you can't completely cover it up. We live in a world filled with remnants and evidence of the ancient past. Okay, it's everywhere. It's all over the place. You just have to start looking at it. Now, I would not recommend people to just jump to conclusions and immediately, oh, that rock is a piece of a titan. It could be anything, but it's not just a rock. Have you ever seen this movie? This is called Moana, Disney's Moana. Now, Moana is searching for a titan. This titan, who's actually an island. She has the ability to petrify herself. She turns into a lava rock monster who's afraid of the water. And that's another theme that you're going to find, by the way. All of these ancient gods and titans, for the most part, all the bad ones, they were really afraid of water, and we always portray them as being terrified of water. As a matter of fact, for all of you Catholics out there, this is where your tradition of holy water comes from. This is why holy water is used to fight the vampires, right? Because the vampires are really just the elven race, or the El, or the Elohim. They are the shining ones. They are the reptilians. They are the lizard people. They are the fish gods. Whatever you would like to call them. Anyhow, the evidence is all around us. It's overwhelming, and people are starting to be able to see what they have never seen before. Why is it important? Because it falls to us to take our lives back into our own hands. It falls to us to educate ourselves, to learn, to research, to test things out. We can no longer trust the system. We can no longer trust those people who are in positions of authority above us. What we have done is we have given the authority to them. We have given away our freedom. We have given away our creative minds. We have given away our time and our energy and our ability to reason and our ability to think outside of the box. I encourage you to take that back. All you have to do is open your eyes. All you have to do is try to see what you have never seen before. And eventually, I believe that you will. Now, what I'd like to do... before, I'm going to jump in the chat here in just a minute. But what I would like to do is I'd like to mention that the giants, especially the titans, are everywhere in our pop culture. If you start looking, start watching the music videos, start watching the movies, they put these huge, giant, titanic heads in the movies for no reason whatsoever. I believe I showed a picture of one from the movie Prometheus, right? There was a huge face in the mountain. It was made of the mountain. You can see it. I hope it comes back up. But they do this all over the place. They will give you symbols that represent esoteric truth that has been kept from you. You see, because no one can really make anything up, okay? There's nothing new under the sun. Everything has been done. Everything has been talked about. The stories have all been told, and it's all set on a loop. So it happens over and over and over, which means we will see, if that's true, the return of the titans, the return of these beings, right? And that's why Trump has a space force, right? That's why we're sending people out to Antarctica to just to do some research. Don't worry about frost giants and there being a huge ice wall and everything that you see in fantasy movies. Don't worry about all that. No, it's just science, it's just the coldest, place that nobody has any business being. And we have all these celebrities taking their trips to Antarctica as well. Well, you see, the reason I mention Antarctica is because, according to my research, I've seen that many of these ancient giants are what are known as the frost giants. You see, the ancient gods and the ancient titans may have been comprised of a different chemical makeup. We are carbon-based beings. What if they were not? What if they had an altogether different type of skin that made them nearly impervious to extreme elements? You see, this body that we have is very fragile. It's very frail. And we put it up on this pedestal like we're the best thing since sliced bread, as far as beings that have ever walked this realm. But I don't think so. I think that there were other beings that physically were very advanced. They can withstand extreme temperatures like the cold or the heat, things like that. The land of the frost giants in Nordic mythology is Jotunheim, or the world of the giants. That's where the giants live. They live outside of our world. They are extraterrestrials. They are terrestrials who live a little off to the side from where we live. Now, the gods all left. The titans are no more. They like we just read in the book of Joshua, they were all killed off in our area. We have not seen them since. I mean, there are accounts. However, let's look at the ancient legends. Let's look at the myths. Even the Bible itself says that those fallen angels are kept under the earth in a place called Tartarus. Well, where have we heard the word Tartarus before, right? Greek mythology. You have the Bible verifying an aspect and an element of the Greek myths themselves. Tartarus is an underground cavern in the inner earth, because the earth has vast inner caverns and caves and hollow systems in it. There are underground bases, underground cities, all over the place under our feet. And Tartarus was a special sort of prison, we'll say, to keep these gigantic beings, not just the Titans, right? Not just those beings who lost in the war against the Titans and the gods, but also the Hecatenares, which are the 100 armed giants, right? So a giant with 100 arms. You see, those actually pre-existed the Titans. You have a few of these incredibly massive titanic beings. By their own right, they were also Titans, okay? But you also have the Cyclops and the Hecatenares. And the Hecatenares, I think I'm saying that correctly, I'm not sure, but the name means 100 hands. So you think about that, and immediately we just dismiss stuff like that. 100 hands, oh man, nobody's born with 100 hands. Well, that's because you're thinking like a human being. But don't we even have anomalies? Don't we have exceptions in our human world where people are born with more than one arm or appendage or even head, and they still live? Of course. How are the Titans portrayed, right? How are the giants portrayed? Look at Jack and the Beanstalk or Jack and the Giant Slayer. Often the Titans will have like 2 or 3 heads, you know? Look at Troll Hunter, right? The trolls, they just sprouted up these extra heads, and in the movie Troll Hunter it was actually like false heads or whatever, and they had one real one. But it doesn't mean it's not true. How do the Hindu depict their gods? With all these arms all over the place, right? Isn't that very interesting? They also depict them as being blue, which I have done many videos about the blue gods, the ancient gods. Typically it was sort of a dark blue, but it depended upon the light at the time, and there was a lot of factors that went into it. However, my point is, we have come to a point in time, a crucial point, where people are starting to just tap in to the truth. You see, this is the great thing. All you truth seekers out there, you're going to love this. You might be seeking the truth. That might be your goal. But what you might not have considered, there's that giant Titan head. That's from the movie Dark City, right? No purpose. That's not even explained in the movie. But there it is. For some reason, you've got these albino god figures down there and this huge Titan head. Anyway, we are coming to a time in our history, in our present, known as the awakening. People are just tapping into information. People are tapping into the truth. People are tapping into what has previously been hidden from us. Disclosure is manifesting itself. You see, you can't hide the truth. You can only cover it up. You can only try to trick the minds and the eyes. You can put a perception filter on the eyes of those who are in this world so that they don't recognize the truth that exists all around them. It's called psychological scotoma. Psychological scotoma is whenever you can just be blind to something that is right there in front of you. But the moment someone shows you, you are broken free of that spell and you can see it. Each and every time you will see it. Many of you might watch the videos of the Titan of Maya Bay, right? There's actually a couple of Titans at the very least in Maya Bay. Some of you might have seen those videos and just say, I don't see anything. It just looks like a mountain. It just looks like a hill to me. It's possible you might be suffering from, not purposefully, and it's not your fault. Okay, we're conditioned. These spells are cast on us from the moment we're born. It's not your fault, okay? But it's called psychological scotoma. It's when you can't see something that is right there in front of you. And I believe that the veil is being lifted. The veil is coming off. We're going to start to see these things. That's why, haven't you ever wondered, like in the past 2 years, just think of the past 2 years, how many movies have come out that starred a titanic being or starred a giant of some sort, you know? I've done many videos about that. They're all over the place. They just exploded a couple years ago. All these movies about giants and titans and giant beings, etc. And that's just in the last 2 years. They've been slowly coming out more and more as time goes on. But what that is a wake-up call. You see, these people who write books and come up with artistic pictures and write stories of fiction or science fiction, what they do is they open up their female energy. They allow themselves some balance for a moment, and they can actually tap into things that have historically happened. It's just that it's not fed to their brain in a way that says, hey, this really happened, right? It's just sort of an image. It's just sort of, basically it's called imagination, okay? And at the imagination level, we are all connected. And that's why you don't have to go to somebody else for all the answers. You don't have to go somewhere to access this stuff. Many people are just simply accessing it. Many people are waking up, and many people are starting to question the narrative that has been scripted out for us to play. And we say, wait a minute, I'm going to play my own role. I'm going to live my own life. I have the freedom to investigate. I have the freedom to be the philosopher that I am, to question reality, to question history. Now, I believe that there's a lot of merit to questioning our history. Even if you don't believe that Titans physically existed, we can at least come together on a common ground and say, our history is not what we thought it was, is it? No. You can look at the ancient buildings of Egypt. You can look at some of the huge temples that were built for the gods. And guess what? How large are these ancient buildings and temples? They're huge. They're houses for the gods, right? This isn't metaphorical. This isn't symbolic. They didn't just build a gigantic house because their god is just, they just think he's so big. We have to build him the biggest house ever because he's just that awesome. No, it's because these beings were physically that big. That's why they required huge steps up to their temples, steps that are not fit or meant for a human being. The Titans actually did exist. They walked among us. They died off in the war between the gods and the Titans and petrified. There are still, I believe, Titans on the barriers, on the outskirts of our realm that we live in. And that's why I believe that our government and many other governments of the world, okay, because they're all basically the same, that they make trips out to the edges of our world, known as Antarctica, that they go and they protect and they seal off places like the North Pole, which is where the myths and legends and stories say that the gods currently reside, where they currently live. Well, some people are soon going to have enough evidence that they're convinced enough to say, hey, let's start taking some samples. Let's start testing out these rocks. Let's start traveling to the ends of the earth to find out the truth behind these myths and these legends and these stories. Let's go back and search for... Now, many of you might not know this, but you know the story of Indiana Jones? You know how Indiana Jones is always searching for all these historical artifacts because he wants the people to have access to them. He wants all of them to be in a museum, etc. Your governments of the world have been doing the Indiana Jones thing since as far back as we can remember. They have been looking for the leftovers from the Titans and from the gods. They've been looking for their technology because they believe that they can find the technology and reverse engineer it in order to, have more control, basically. And they're also looking for things that they can use when those beings return. Because when those beings return, think about it, right? They're going to be the ones who have the power. The ancient gods, the Titans themselves. And now the world governments are saying, we better get our hands on some of that ancient technology so that we can win the inevitable war because we want to keep power. And that's why I believe that the Titans and the giants, as physically and historically having lived, is being held back from us. It's something that has been kept secret because they don't want to lose their power. They don't want to give over control of the world to another group of beings, right? And I believe that they are in constant communication with these beings, that they have found various ways to communicate with the Titans or with the gods or with the giants themselves, etc. Now, those Titans, those giants, when we're talking about all of this, whatever you would like to label them as, try not to think in terms of good versus evil, right? Because those are just beings, just like you're a being, you know what I mean? So I reserve judgment for the gods, for the Titans, all of that, right? Think about this, though. If the Titans do return, does that make them evil because they're walking around stepping on cities and stuff? Do you consider the ants when you walk on the sidewalk? Are you constantly making sure that you're not destroying some other being's home or whatnot? No, of course you're not. Sometimes we do, when we can, when we think about it. Of course, I do. I don't go around aimlessly just stepping on ant hills and stuff. But maybe the Titans have a similar mentality. They're just gigantic. Regardless, the fact is there is an overabundance of evidence in our world, whether it be through stories, our myths and legends, our oral traditions and histories, our very own scriptures and our religious writings. All of these agree that the Titans walked this world, that they were the terraformers of Earth, that they shaped it all. And now we are finding the remains. We're finding the actual remains of these beings themselves. That's why I believe, especially in Thailand, okay, the Thai understand, a lot of the Pacific Islanders and Polynesians, they understand these things. This is a part of their history. Like, they would say, yeah, of course. Like, this wouldn't be a chin scratcher to many of these people, especially the older inhabitants of these places. They would say, of course, exactly, right, true. Just like Moana's grandmother in the movie Moana. She's seen as kind of a nutty, batty person, but in reality, she knew that Te Fiti was real. She knew that Maui needed to help to, restore the heart of Te Fiti, all of that. And the elders of the Polynesians and the Pacific Islanders, they know that this is just accepted history. This really did happen. And that's why you have the remnants and the remains of ancient giant petrified beings all around our world. I encourage each and every one of you, if you find this topic interesting, start searching around in your town. Look in your areas where you live, on your islands, in your cities. Look for these things and just see what you can find, There was a movie called Bridge to Terabithia, I believe. And also another movie, what was that movie? Caroline, where the main characters, they had this special rock deal, and I think it was typically a triangle, and they would put it over their eye, and this is symbolic, okay? I do that real quick because I know everyone's going to go, oh, he did Illuminati stuff. No, you don't understand Illuminati symbolism. So calm down. Take a step back and chill out, okay? I'll be happy to explain all of the Illuminati symbolism to you in another video. However, my point is, in these movies, these characters, they put this rock, basically, this amulet, this special magic medallion up to their eye, and it has a hole in it. They're able to see titans and giants and all of these magical creatures because we live, this is the truth, in a magical realm. We don't live on a planet. We live in a realm. We live in a realm where there have been all of these stories and myths and legends. They're true. I talk about this all the time. I talk about vampires being real. I talk about the elves being real, giants and titans. You see, the problem is we get hung up on the labels. We get hung up on the words. We get hung up on the descriptions and the mental pictures that we have been programmed to see in our minds when we think of these things. We've been programmed to see them as being childlike or ridiculous or too good, too great to be true, too crazy. It's too far-fetched, but it's not. It's more true than the world that you see around you. And many of you know this. You feel it. You've always known it. And this is going to be exciting news for many of you. So I encourage all of you to look for mud fossils in your particular area of the world. Soon I will unveil my website. And on my website, I will have a contact tab where you guys can send me all of your examples if you'd like to share your mud fossil examples with me. But I'm really excited to actually go and find more mountain titans, okay? Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying all the mountains are titans, okay? Just calm down. But the mountains are something, okay? And many of those mountains happen to look exactly like the remains of the Titans. And many of those mountains actually have stories. There's a story of a mountain here in Fort Collins in Colorado where they have a park. I highly recommend, go check out my video where I went to the giant park, okay? It's just a park right next to this huge mountain, and they have this petrified giant in the middle of the park, and the kids play all over it. And then they have a story that talks about this titan that once guarded that particular part of Colorado. These stories are everywhere. I'm excited to know yours. So if you're watching this video later on, please feel free to leave a comment and give and share your information all around the world, because we did a live stream yesterday and we proved that we can come together to ask questions to recreate and reconstruct a truer version of our history. And we need one another. We need each other's help in doing this. So I highly recommend checking it out if you're interested. If you're not interested, that's okay too, okay? I'm not the type to judge people. But if you are, I'm excited to see what you guys are able to find, okay? Because this is just me. This is what I have found on my journey. And this is a small piece of a much greater picture. And much of it has been veiled from our sight. But we live in a time now where that veil's coming off and people are starting to wake up and see more of that picture. So with that being said, I just want to thank everybody for joining us today. I think today we've got the most viewers I've ever had on my channel. There's over 250 people watching. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the chat. I want to say hello to the members, to the viewers, to my patrons, everyone. I want to thank you very much for supporting my work and supporting the things that I do, including writing my book, my website, and many other things that I do. So I'm going to be jumping into the chat, and then I'm going to tell you what to expect for tomorrow's video and going into Christmas or the winter time, right? But let me jump into the chat. If you would like to talk directly to me, please type at JayDreamerZ. You must spell it correctly, and it will highlight on my side. Then I can go ahead and read the various comments. Kimberly Marie Bach says, at JayDreamerZ, I have pics of 3. Hold on, chat's going a little fast. I have pics of 3 different giant heads. One in Lake Isabella, California. Another near La Paz, Arizona. Tommy T says, what's up? Richard Burke says, great live stream. Thank you. So everyone out there, I know you all have excellent examples of the ancient petrified world. I'm going to make something available for you all to share that. I don't have it ready right now, but the website will be, I'm rushing the website basically. I'm such a perfectionist, but there will be something on the website where you can all share your pictures and your videos. I would love to see videos. Like I said, I plan on going as close to this place next year as I possibly can, and I would like to get a sample, and I'm going to take my drone out there so that we can see it for ourselves. Because one thing we shouldn't rely on is simple internet searches. Internet searches are very helpful, but we get so much more when we have a hands-on experience, and that's what I plan on doing next year. So I'm jumping back into the chat. Pingu for Life says, JayDreamerZ, I had to watch vids. So glad to catch a live stream. Good chat today. Tommy T says, this is my favorite topic that you discuss. Dreamy Life says, JayDreamerZ, have you ever dreamed of titans and giants? That's a really interesting subject. I have had some very vivid dreams. Most of them are about an apocalyptic scenario, but I'm very calm and I'm very happy and I'm very peaceful, and I'm usually helping out other people to survive this sort of end of the world, in my dreams at the very least. Let's see. Kimberly says, JayDreamerZ, and one my mom took one near Dripping Springs. Okay, so she's got a giant Indian head. Lainey Lacroix says, JayDreamerZ, thank you. Seeing you and the people in the chat share knowledge gives me comfort. Question: when you say that you know about the Silica ancient world, did you have visions, dreams, or flashbacks about it? Okay, I'm going to have to come back to the chat. Okay, so I'm not looking at the chat now. I want to address that particular question. People ask me quite often, where do you get your information from? Where are you getting all this stuff? You know why? I'll tell you why. It's because we're conditioned to want a source. We're conditioned to want some sort of like book that we can go reference. But the thing is, those books, they were just written by people like me. That's why I'm writing a book right now, right? So my experience has added to my knowledge, okay? Most of our knowledge comes from our experience. Some of it has to do with my own research for years and years and years, my own studies on various topics for many years. But another part of it is magic. That's where the other part of it comes from. Just like I was talking about earlier, there are individuals that have what are known as the shine, and they can tap into information without having to jump on the internet and look stuff up or whatever. So that's where it's probably half and half, I would say. Half my information comes from my creative side, my feminine energy, etc., my ability to tap into that energy and share information with other people, just like Professor X. he puts on his hat, right? His Professor X basically puts on a tinfoil hat, okay? And when he puts this thing on, he can connect to all the other minds. It's really hard to explain, so I hope that helps you to understand. I actually want to mention the X-Men real quick, okay? Let's go ahead and go to the whiteboard. I just want to share something with you real quick. So we're going to go to camera 2. All right, take it away, camera 2. I hope this works. Okay, so yesterday I was sharing the Phoenician language, the Paleo-Hebrew with you. One of those glyphs looks just like this, okay? That is Tet, right? Tet is like the letter T, basically, right? Kind of like a letter T, okay? This is the symbol for the X-Men. The X-Men are those human beings today that have that particular junk DNA unlocked. So they have these extrasensory abilities or whatnot. Now, this is the letter and the number Tet in Phoenician or Paleo-Hebrew. This is also the symbol for the X-Men. You'll see this particular symbol all over the place. Now, here's another interesting thing. This also equals the number 9, right? Believe it or not. So, if Tet means 9, numerically, those of the 9 are the Tet-On, those of the 9, or the Titans, basically. And what the picture is, see, this is actually just a picture. This is a boundary, okay? This is a boundary. This is basically our world, okay? So the letter Tet conveys, a boundary or sometimes a basket or something circular that keeps things in or keeps things out, etc. Let's go ahead and leave camera 2. Thank you, camera 2. Everybody give camera 2 a big round of applause. Thank you, camera 2. All right, so let's go ahead and go back to the live scene. That's the Tet. So I wanted to share that with you because you might see this as an esoteric symbol, okay? I said I would explain all of the Illuminati symbols, and I will. All you got to do is just ask if you're interested. But if you watch my videos, you will inevitably learn about all the symbolism that we deem to be evil and satanic, etc. And you'll learn what it really is. You'll learn what it really means and why certain groups use certain symbols. The symbols themselves are not evil. They're not good. They're just symbols. They represent something. It's a message, and that message is being given to those who know. So I just want to do my part to help you if you're interested in being somebody who knows. But that's the Tet, and the Tet is the number 9. You might want to check out if you're interested in the 9 symbolism or the 6 upside down, right? The spiral. Watch the movie called 9. It's a kid's movie, but it's one of the most esoteric movies I've ever seen in my life. And it's about the Titans, who were the humans in this particular movie, and how this one Titan put his own soul into all these little puppets, and they went around in a fallen world after all the Titans or humans had died off, and they try to figure out what's going on. And sometimes they gleaned some of the ancient symbols from those humans, and sometimes they gleaned some of their technology. That's the world we live in today. Your governments are on the lookout for the spear of destiny, for the blood of Christ, for the cup of life, all of these things. You know why? Because they're true. Because they actually exist, because the governments put enough stock in them to go out and search for them. Hitler was known for this. He went out and he was looking for all of these ancient artifacts, not because he just really appreciated art, he's such a lover of art and he's just a collector of all things historic. No. Are you crazy? Hitler was looking for weapons. All of these governments, they're looking for weapons. That's why when we have a war, the first place that the invading country will go basically loot and plunder are the libraries. That's the first thing that happens. The war in Iraq or Iraq, the first thing that happens is they went directly to the Iraqi library and basically, according to some stories that I've read, wrecked the place, stole a bunch of stuff, etc. Information is being held and kept from us, and this is why. even in the Bible, it talks about the end times, and it talks about how the Lord is going to come back with legion upon legion of his angels, and that there's going to be this Ragnarok, there's going to be the end times, the war between all of the beings all at one time, and that's also portrayed in like Marvel's DC universe. They drop all of these breadcrumbs of knowledge about the ancient titans and gods all over the place. However, it doesn't take away, right? If we believe these religious scriptures and documents about the past, then shouldn't we put some stock into what they say about the future? What they all agree on is things happen in a loop. Everything happens in cycles. There could come a day when we would see titans return into our world. In the Bible, there's actually a story where 12 individuals from the nation of Israel, when they were wandering the desert, they were looking for a new home. Thank you for the donation, Jessica. She says, I know things I can't explain as well. So the Israelites in the Bible, in the Old Testament, they were wandering around looking for a new place, right? Their God had said, I have given you this land over here. Now that land is inhabited by the Anakim, or the Anunnaki, basically, or the Raphaim, or the giants, or the titans themselves. And there is a story that's collaborated in many other books as well, other contemporaries from the Old Testament. And the story says that 2 men, Joshua and Caleb, they came back with the other 10 guys, and they said, whoa, yes, like that's a scary place, and there are giants. And when we looked up at them, they saw us like grasshoppers. Now, so many people, when they read that, they'll say, oh, that's a metaphor. People don't understand the Bible. It talks in symbolism and poems and metaphors, etc. Why would that be a metaphor when it literally talks about giants walking around? They said, this is how tiny we are. They brought back fruit that was gigantic with them. That's because that was the land of the lost. That was the land of the giants. That's the land before time. And the nation of Israel was terrified because all of the other 10 guys, they said, no, we don't want to fight these guys. Like, we're like grasshoppers. They are giants. But Caleb and Joshua, they say, that's true. There is a land of giants, but we can take them. Just like in the book of Joshua that we just read, right? The book of Joshua goes into more stories about these titans and giants. And we learn about King Og, and we learn about some of these other ancient books that were written. There's actually a book of King Og. There's a book of the giants that was found with the Dead Sea Scrolls that talks about the giants living and breathing and walking in our realm. Anyhow, I want to jump back into the chat. I'm so sorry. I know I went off on a tangent. So if you have a question for me, we're going to take the next 10 minutes to just chat. If you have a question, type in @JayDreamerZ, spell it correctly. I won't go off on any more tangents. I just want to answer questions and say hello to everyone, and then we're going to wrap things up. Unlearn the System, one of my members of the JayDreamerZ channel here, says, JayDreamerZ, there is a Maori story about 4 brothers that were titans, possibly son of Maui. The 4 brothers, one got angry and left Mount Tongariro and Mount Nagaru and Mount Rapihu. They are in the same. So what he's saying is there's other stories. Now, I would love to hear your stories, but I'm not the only one. Everyone, leave comments. I don't really typically ever ask anyone for a comment or anything like that, but you can help. If we get together, we can provide so much more information. I'm providing my perspective, my experience, and my walk. We could come together and share our collective information to get so many more breadcrumbs to lead us home. Dreamy Life says, JayDreamerZ, waking the sleeping giant. Exactly. And that, you know what? Even in the movie BFG, okay? BFG has all these titans and they sleep under the grass, and so they look like sleeping giants. They look like the mountains. 5 Artis Liberalis says, JayDreamerZ, please check out JayDreamerZ in den Dolomiten in Italy. It is a giant building big enough for giants. Okay, that's good. I will check that out. Okay, let's go ahead and kick George here real quick, because we don't do negativity on my channel. There we go. Yeah, we don't do negativity. This is a place for us to come together, even if we don't agree. And if you don't get it, or you're not into it, it's not your thing, just don't waste your time. Go back to watching PewDiePie and Cotton Candy YouTube channels and, whatever retarded things people are interested in watching while wasting time. That's fine with me, We don't all have to agree. We don't all have to be on the same page. All I'm saying is, here's my experience. Here's what I'm seeing. And if it's valuable, or if you find it helpful, by all means, add it to the Rolodex of your brain. Add it to your own library of experience and information. I'm not saying I'm correct. I'm not saying I'm absolutely right, but I am saying there seems to be a whole lot of evidence that's starting to get pretty heavy that supports this ancient world that's been kept from us, a hidden history that our rulers don't want us to know about. They don't want you to know who you really are. Tilt-A-Whirl Girl says, JayDreamerZ, how old were you when you woke up and started on your journey? There was never a point in time when I woke up. I've just always been different. I've always had this sort of sixth sense about me. I've always questioned authority. I've always questioned my world. You can ask my mom. She's in the chat. You could tell them, Mom, right? This is how I've always been. So this is an innate part of my nature, okay? But things have become amplified in the last, 10 years. The last 10 years, things have really just grown exponentially for me on my path. Let's see here. Oh, Mike McHale says, he's talking about the Grand Teton National Park. Exactly. That's a perfect example. Now, I used to work in the Grand Teton National Park, and what they will tell you is, Grand Teton is French for big tits, basically, big breasts. And it's like, okay, yeah, I could see, mountains and all that. But they say it's because it looks like a woman is lying down and the mountain range looks like a woman. So maybe it's not big breasts. Maybe it's the giant titans, the Grand Teton, right? That was a good catch. Let's see. Carolyn V says, JayDreamerZ, why do you think many giants are named Jack? That's a great question. I don't have enough time to get into that. I highly recommend doing a video search for one of my older videos called Thor in the Box, okay? And I talk all about the name Jack and why the name Jack is used for the hero or the protagonist who typically fights the dragons or the giants or whatnot. But you can learn a lot of stuff by checking out that video. Good question, and I highly recommend you to just check it out for yourself and then tell me what you found. Say it again, says JayDreamerZ, so do you believe in one god or many gods? Irrelevant. It's irrelevant. It's totally irrelevant to this video, right? It doesn't matter what I believe in. All that matters is what you see here, what you see before you. So you ask yourself, what do you see? What do you think about it, right? I have lots of videos that talk about like my spiritual beliefs and stuff. I have a whole playlist about it. I'm not trying to like dismiss your question, but I'm just saying like for this video, let's stick on track. Let's stay on focus, right? But by all means, go check out some of my other videos where I do talk about who God is and who the gods are or were, and so on and so forth. Inner Earth, yes, absolutely. There is an inner Earth. There are actually various realms, and I believe that there's an entirely different realm below us. I believe that there are realms above us and peripheral realms off to the side. Chantal says, JayDreamerZ, do you think will be rest again once the truth comes out? Yeah, absolutely. You see, that's what happens, Chantal. That pendulum drops from paradise. We get to the lowest point and it has to continue swinging. It goes right back up. It takes us into better times. It takes us into a better energy. And I believe that we're going to get to that. It's just around the corner, I believe. Hamad, hey, what's up, Hamad? Hamad says, JayDreamerZ, do you think there are giants there in the North Pole? Yes, I do. And one of these days, sometime soon, I plan on finding out for myself. Laney Lacroix says, wow, JayDreamerZ, thank you for reading my question. When you showed Tet, what I got was energy within, like a box or a vessel. Yeah, look at the Xbox symbol, right? The Xbox directly related, and you also have the black cube symbolism as well. There's a lot there, but I can't get into the black cube symbolism. I have done a lot of videos, so check that out if you'd like to. Jonathan Valentine says, JayDreamerZ, what do you think about astrology relating to giants and titans? I'm going to take 2 more questions after this, and then we're going to have to wrap things up, everybody. So, what do I think about astrology relating to giants and titans? Well, I know from my research, whenever I've looked into some of the ancient religious manuscripts and whatnot, that astrology is directly related to the titans themselves and the gods. As a matter of fact, all of our planets, or what we call planets, the heavenly luminaries, the lights in our sky, they're all named after the titans themselves. Why would that be? Because mankind knew that they should relate the heavenly bodies in the sky to the titans. And that's something I'm going to leave for you to figure out why. Why would the titans or the ancient gods be related to those heavenly bodies? Why would they do that, you know? That's a good one. Okay, so let's see here. Tommy T, JayDreamerZ, how do you think we get 100% proof of titans and giants? There's no such thing as 100% proof of anything. You go with your gut. You go with your feelings. You go with the path where you are at that moment in time. Because guess what? Information will abound. Information will always be there, more and more, to give us revelation after revelation, insight after insight. I don't recommend anybody plant their flag, take a stance, and develop a belief. Just experience, just watch, just observe, and just see what things feel to you. See how things look to you, you know? That's what I encourage people to do. Okay, so let's see here. One more. We've got... Oh, Jayma Barker asks a really good question. Jayma says, JayDreamerZ, if you happen to see a giant on your excursion, what will you do? Probably hide, honestly. I mean, it depends. It depends on what happens, and it depends on how big they are. If it's a titan, you know, they might not see me, and I don't want to get stepped on, so I have to use my wits. I have to have my wits about me, right? But going to the North Pole, I'll probably talk about this more next year, but I expect to meet some giants while I'm there. Now, according to many of the stories, they have the ability to communicate with us, even though they might not speak American or English or a various plethora of thousands of other languages that we have, or hundreds. They have the ability to communicate even still, right? And that's because they might still carry with them telepathy. They might just be able to just read your thoughts, feel your feelings, you know? Which gets into some other interesting subjects as far as technology that we're coming up with that can do the same thing. But if we can come up with it, how much? It's probably already been done, you know, by those who came before us. That's the last question for today. I want to thank everybody for coming out. Like I said, this isn't something you have to believe. This is something that I am very serious about. I talk about all of these types of topics here on my channel, usually about 4 days out of the week. And I want to welcome everybody. If you're just joining, if you're just watching for the first time, thank you so much for spending some time with me. I'm going to go. Feel free to hang out and enjoy the credits, and I'll see you guys next week.